from
Yeah.
4:30 to 5:30.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be sitting on the planet in these crazy times. Delighted to be here. My name is Christopher Bishop. I'm going to be hosting and moderating our conversation this evening. Our focus is on AI and quantum. Just sidebar, I want to say that I'm delighted that we can do this, trying to look on the positive side, right, of this crazy situation we find ourselves in with COVID and economic crises. Wax philosophic for a moment, but it lets us do things like this, gather people from all over the world to have a conversation about important topics. So again, glad to be here. We have a distinguished panel. Quick introduction from me. I'm a former IBMer. I'm a technology futurist. I'm a LinkedIn learning instructor. I'm a TEDx speaker. And the net is I'm passionate about the power of emerging technology to transform both business and culture. And I think quantum is certainly positioned to drive this kind of transformation in to the degree we really have never seen before. Doing things like solving intractable problems, making the planet a better place to live, if you will, supporting all kinds of innovative processes and business models and cultural transformation. We're going to talk a little bit about this evening. So with that, let me just tell you who we're going to hear from this evening. We have Doug Fink, who's the managing editor at Inside Quantum Technology and Quantum Computing Report, the publisher. We have Mehdi Bozzo-Rey, who's a business development executive at Cambridge Quantum Computing, and Shahar Keinan, who's the CEO and co-founder of POLARISqb. So I've asked each of the panelists to share a little bit about who they are, what they do, what their company does, give you a little insight.
I'm also going to be on the panel, as I mentioned. Yeah, continue.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
for sure. Oh, yeah. We got it. And then after each of them speaks, I've put together a set of questions working with the panelists. And then I'd ask that you, the participants, the viewers, the listeners, the watchers, please put questions in the Q&A. Do it as we go, and we'll get to them at the end of our hour. So again, delighted to be here. Looking forward to a really interesting conversation about quantum and AI. I'd like to ask Shahar to start, right? Tell us a little bit about POLARISqb and what you do and how you came to found this company.
Sure. You have my slides?
Yep, let me pull them up here. Let me share my screen. Hang on. Okay, here we go. All right, there we are. Can you see them?
Yes.
Okay, great. So
Polaris Quantum Biotech, we are ushering in a quantum revolution in drug discovery. We're doing that by rapid drug discovery in vast chemical space. And of course, it's powered by quantum computing. Can you go to the next slide?
Yeah. Let me see if I can advance here. There we go.
So our mission in Polaris is to develop drug leads at scale. And at scale, I mean at large scale, to treat and cure all disease for all people. And we're doing that by using the latest innovation in cloud, quantum computing, AI, and machine learning. So we are really at the forefront and the cutting area of both quantum computing and AI and machine learning. Next. We have started by building the first drug discovery platform on a quantum computing, and this is a working platform. Next. And we're doing that in order to solve the drug discovery hardest optimization problem. And that is in a molecular space of billions of molecules that are possible. Which one is the right one, the one that will become a drug? We published some work on that if anybody is interested in that. Now, let me just remind you that most of the drug medicines are small molecules that are relevant for a specific protein target. And we use those drugs, those medicines, to block the activity of the protein, and that means block the disease. So if we're thinking about COVID-19, that's a virus. Viruses have proteins. We're stopping the activity of the virus by stopping the protein. Now, how do we find these small molecules? We're looking for them at chemical space. Chemical space is large, it's huge chemical space. 10 to the power of 60 possible molecules. And we're searching through that chemical space using quantum computing and AI. Next, please. We accelerate drug discovery with quantum computing. We're doing it because it's good business. Today, traditional drug discovery takes 3 years. With quantum computing, it takes us 4 months. That's a huge saving, both in time and in money. And that's what let us do everything at scale. Next. Our software called Tachyon is using both automation, so we're doing multiple targets and we're doing faster runs. We're using AI, machine learning, and analytics tools. We have a data store that is updated with every run, and the models are updating. We're building large chemical space, and because we're doing that at once, we don't need to do many small corrective steps, which is what the industry is doing now. And all of this is built on top of quantum and cloud computing. And we have a system that chooses the right compute environment based on both the cost and the time scale. Because we're using AI and machine learning, the more projects that we complete, the smarter our Tachyon becomes, of course. Next. As I said before, we're solving drug discovery hardest optimization problem. In a molecular space of billions, we're finding the right one. We start from a protein, a disease profile, starting from billions of molecules, and at the end, we get a list of 10 to 20 molecules which are relevant. Right now, we are running on Fujitsu Digital Annealer. That's a quantum-inspired technology, but we are also working on D-Wave quantum annealer. Next, but yeah. If anybody, I'm happy to be here today, and if anybody has any more questions, please either write to me or to Polaris, and we'll be happy to answer those questions.
Great, Shahar, thank you very much. And I just want to mention that I put the link in your chart with into the chat client. So I want to encourage participants to take a look at the work you shared. It's a quantum-inspired approach to de novo drug design. So please take a look at that. It's in the chat, everybody. Great, so thank you very much. That's again the time scale, the ability to shorten the time scale with quantum. Again, just fantastic, right? And as you say, driving business models, right? It's producing outcomes that generate not only value to people but to business. So it's a great win-win. All right, thank you. Mehdi, I want to turn it over to you and ask if you would please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what goes on at Cambridge Quantum Computing. Let me find your charts.
Thank you very much, Chris. So my name is Mehdi Bozzo-Rey, or Bozzo-Rey, if you want to say it the French way. I'm a physicist by training, and I spent the last 20 years basically doing high performance computing and now quantum computing on both business and technical side as well. So it gives me a pretty good overview of what's going on. So let me talk about Cambridge Quantum Computing now.
Let's see if this is.
Oh, and of course, I'm also an ex-IBMer.
I was going to say, yeah, we were both.
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah, so a few informations about CQC. Timeline first. So it was established in 2014.
Yes.
Let
me try to interrupt you. Can you see your charts? Am I sharing them?
Right now, I can't, but I was able to see them like 2 seconds.
Hang on, let me fix it. This is operator error. Hang on. Okay, here we go. All right, how about now?
Black screen.
Black screen. Okay.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, I can see everything.
Populating?
Yes. Okay, so let me rewind and restart. Timeline, CQC established in 2014, so it's not a brand new company. In terms of sizing, a bit more than 100 employees globally. What makes it special, I would say, is that we do have over 60 scientists, like 35 plus PhDs. So it's really research is at the core of the company. And I'll show you a nice picture later on. In terms of focus, our real focus is on solutions. Like, we don't want to do science for just doing science. We want it to be useful for people and customers. And we have a quantum development platform called Ticket, which is really our foundational piece. Then enterprise applications in quantum chemistry. So the platform is called Human. And we also have libraries of algorithms, like regular and standard quantum algorithms, and also machine learning algorithms. We do play in the quantum security as well, but I'm going to skip this piece for today. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Oh, actually, this doesn't show up.
Is this right?
No, there's like lots of. Oh, here we go. Oh, can you go through all of them? Sorry about that.
That's all right. So let's a build. Is that good?
There should be 2 more.
2 more. Okay, that's all right. There we are. Okay.
Here we go. Yeah, I know that there's like many of them. So that's basically every single area we have a play. So again, I'm going to skip number 1, cybersecurity, but we have Human, which is a platform for quantum chemistry. We also do optimization. We do have our own quantum software development platform. Again, this is our foundational piece that allows us to do everything else. We do quantum machine learning, and we started not a long time ago to do quantum natural language processing. Next slide, please. The question would be, okay, wait a minute, why are you doing so many things in so many areas? Basically because there's a demand from the industry, and the applications of quantum computing span many verticals, like basically almost all of them. So we're talking about chemistry and pharma. We're talking about industrial goods, but also information technology and finance, and oil and gas as well, and all kind of other verticals. Next slide, please. So this slide is actually from IBM. You can find it on the web. I think it's a wonderful slide because not only it gives you an idea about the timing when things will happen, more than likely, but it also maps the type of algorithms that will be used to solve specific industry problems. So you see, for example, Horizon 1, which is like almost now, or at least very soon. You can see that financial services, for example, they should benefit from not only optimization, but also AI and, well, quantum AI and quantum machine learning. And you can go through the 3 horizons, and you will see that the algorithms family stay the same. So you have chemical simulations on one side, scenario simulation, then optimization and AI ML. And that's exactly why we play in these areas. Next slide, please. So that's the picture I absolutely love. So that this is our finance and machine learning team. And as you can see, there's a lot of people. So we really did invest a lot. And if you check on our website or just do a quick search on archive, you will see that the team is highly productive in terms of pure science. And we also did some partnerships with large companies like, for example, Total, which is also available on the web. Next slide, please. So I'll spend like 2 minutes talking about Ticket, because again, this is really our foundational piece. Like when you build a house, you have this big slab of concrete. So that's Ticket, basically. The particularity here is that we use it, but we make it available to everyone else as well. Next slide, please. So that's an overview of Ticket. So it's we call it a quantum SDK, but it includes a compiler. And as we will see in the next few slides, you'll get the value of the compiler. It connects, so we say it is retargetable and platform agnostic. So retargetable means that it's kind of, okay, let's say it's an intermediate representation in the sense that you can do language translations. So for example, someone who got trained on Qiskit, which is the quantum SDK led by IBM, and I have to say the most successful so far. But you need to, you want to run your algorithm on a device that is not supported by Qiskit, then you use Ticket and you make this connection. Now, if you want to use one high-level function of Qiskit, but then do something in PyQuil and then run on an IonQ device, for example, you can also use Ticket for doing so. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So access to any device from any quantum SDK, and that's what I just explained. What it really enables customers and researchers as well is rapid prototyping. So again, today there's like a small set of viable quantum algorithms that you can run on actual devices. One of them, well known, is VQE, the variational quantum Eigen solver. And you just don't want to have to recode the VQE algorithm every single time you change device. So what you can do is you can use the Qiskit environment, use this VQE algorithm, just do a function call to the Aqua library, and then use PyTicket to run on a device that is not supported by the Qiskit ecosystem. So that really enables, let's say, researchers, for example, to try out many things super quickly and then basically increase their production in terms of research and articles. Next slide, please. The second, what I call, the previous one. Yeah, the one in the middle. Thank you. The second one that is highly important, especially in the industry, it's circuit optimization and noise mitigation. So again, you can call these high-level functions, use these pre-coded algorithms, run them on a non-supported device. And by non-supported, again, I mean non-supported by the quantum SDK that you want to use, but you can keep the optimization and noise mitigation that we do. And by optimization, what I mean is circuit optimization. So at the end of the day, the devices that are available today are extremely noisy. I mean, to be frank, they are not that great. So the key, yes, the key is really to get the shortest possible circuits executed on the device. And during the compilation process, you need to map this high-level language that you use, either visually, the composer from IBM, for example, or from Qiskit, like pure Python code. So you need to do this mapping and translation into something that's executable on the device. And it involves lots of what we call gates. So that's equivalent to the classical gates that you have in a circuit, except they are quantum. And during this mapping process, you need to transform the circuit. And the goal here is to come up with the final circuit that is the shallowest, so it can be run on the device. The other thing is those devices are noisy. Actually, they are called NISQ, noise intermediate scale quantum devices, so extremely noisy. And the key in any process will be to mitigate this noise. And what we do with Ticket is you can transport this optimization and noise mitigation across quantum SDKs to non-supported devices from these SDKs. So that's extremely useful for, again, our commercial partners. Next slide, please. Okay. And finally, if you step back and think the other way, another very good thing would be to be able to use devices that are just brand new and not supported by anyone. So that's the case for, let's say, quantum hardware startups, for example. So quantum computers today are based on different technologies, and there's many and more quantum startups starting. And key for them is really to make their new devices available to ecosystems, and especially developers' ecosystems. So as soon as they connect their device to the PyTicket interface, we give them access to multiple ecosystems, including Qiskit. And it also works the other way, like one big bank, for example, who would like to try a brand new device, can also use this this way to access the device. Next slide, please. So there's the website and also my email address in case you have any question. Thank you very much.
Great. Mehdi, thank you very much. I have to say, one of my main takeaways is it must be intimidating to go to work at a company every day where there are 35 PhDs wandering around.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So that was wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, Doug, please tell us about what you do about the
We'll be glad to.
reporting.
We'll be glad to say that. My current interest in quantum computing is I have a private equity company backed up by, as part of the, as a managing partner by a famous private equity company in many areas called Blackmore Partners to start with. There are a few others who are backing up with me, and money is not an object because they do quite a lot of that, and my own way of bringing money and so on. Our focus in that one is anything in the USA and USA friendly countries. We're not going to go too far away, but we will be focusing more on USA and some USA friendly countries. And UK Cambridge is a famous company anyway, not limited to USA. That's one part of it. And just as an FYI, I have been on the drug discovery company boards in silico, as Shahar was alluding to. And we did this before quantum computing was at all anything practical at that time. We used AI and some ML, but nothing serious at that time when we did. And we looked at small molecules, and companies like Johnson & Johnson, Abbott Labs, only as examples, they would come to us and say, we want to do this small molecule, research and create small molecules in silico. And because it is a lot more expensive for them to do in the traditional clinical chemistry top down. And what we would do is we would do the analysis and measure computer clusters and come up with, and then sometimes, as she was very rightfully saying, this is not practically able to be done. We put it aside, clinical chemists, physics experts on the physics-based modeling and protein folding, whatever it takes to do to make sure it's functional, doable, etc., validated by human beings as well because of their expertise. And we have done blood thinning products and Alzheimer as examples only I'm mentioning. And so that's one aspect of it. I don't want to get into details unless it's required to do.
So
And
we're
then,
using, not to interrupt you, we're using high performance computing? Like what kind of device?
yeah, we did. At that time, we used we did wax clusters, right? The virtual machine clusters is what we used because quantum devices were not available. I mean, the top people from IBM are my close friends, so including the director of the IBM Almaden lab. And so only recently all of this is happening in quantum computing, before which whatever clusters that were available we have used and sorted out based on the competition. If it takes about 30, 40, $50 million for a top-down assay approach by Genentech, etc., Abbott Labs, we could do it much cheaper because it's all in silico. And then once that is accepted by them, then we try to gather multiple small molecules that goes into a capsule as a pouch as a medicine, and that we would give them. And then we also would do some in vivo. We were not specializing in vivo because it's not practical to do all of them. And clinical testing, I understand all of that in detail, but we didn't go further yet. Now with the quantum computing, I want to bring in investments, major investments in terms of few $100 million to $1 billion per company. As you all know, this is a big money business these days everywhere. with
Well, Mr.
IBM.
Murphy, I just want to interrupt you and ask that I want to have Doug share what he does, and then we're going to do some Q&A. So
Yeah. Just want to make sure I gave you the high level on that. And
yeah,
then
no, thank you
bringing
very much.
investments for investment, and then taking some controlled things maybe. And for M&A, we need to watch. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So we look at the
No,
intensity of investments and so on. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that background. So Doug, I'm going to put up your charts
Yep.
here.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you
Can you see
for
that?
inviting me to the panel. Yep, I can see it.
Okay,
So
great.
I am Doug Fink. I am the publisher and managing editor of the Quantum Computing Report. And you can see our logo there. Go to the next slide, Chris. So I started the Quantum Computing Report in 2015. At that time, it seemed like it was going to be an interesting area. No one was reporting on it. And I thought it was worthy to really help people know what was happening in the industry. It is now the leading market analyst website for what's happening in the industry. We report on all the news, the fundings, the players. We have all sorts of tables, what venture capitalists are investing in what companies. We have something called technical scorecards that show how each of the companies are doing. And, we have thousands of readers now on the site. This includes quantum industry executives, venture capitalists, congressional analysts, a lot of people, of course, in the research community too. And the website is well known, at least within the industry. It's been quoted by the Washington Post, CNBC, Forbes, and many others. An important thing I do want to let everyone know, though, is if you are interested in quantum computing and you're not currently a subscriber to our weekly newsletter, I would invite you to do so. You can just go to our homepage right there, and you can subscribe. You get a weekly newsletter every Sunday. It'll tell you what happened in the past week, and it's a great way to catch up on what's happening in the industry without having to go through tons and tons of journals or news articles. If you go to the next slide, Chris. So just a little bit about me. So what qualifies me to report on this? I tell people jokingly, I am a refugee from the classical computing industry. I also worked at IBM. Actually, my first job was as a mainframe computer designer at IBM in New York. But I worked at Intel, Western Digital. I did several startup companies, bought out several times. But there was a common thread in many of my jobs and roles, is that I always seem to be involved in high performance computing in one form or the other, in the classical sense. And I've been involved in many different areas, from marketing, engineering, operations, executive management, those types of things. So I have a very good understanding of what's happening in how the classical computing industry evolved and how it changed. And one of the things I bring to the party is a sort of a thesis of my own, which is that elements of the industry structure and how the industry will develop in quantum computing will replicate what we saw previously in the semiconductor industry and the classical computing industry. And you'll see that in many of my articles that I see that already, is that certain things are happening, things like consolidations and buyouts and technology changes and those types of things. And it really, the experience I've had in classical computing really brings something to the party. So if you go to the next slide, this would be my last summary slide. So I took this slide from a report that the Boston Consulting Group just issued last week. And they actually took their slide from QCware. So, but I do have a reference there at the bottom, and you can find it on the web. It's a report from Boston Consulting Group, says it's time for financial institutions to place their bets on quantum. But if there's anything that you would want to get out of this whole session, I think there's two key points here. First, if you look at that chart, you'll see it's been divided into 3 different time frames: 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and 10 to 20 years. And what it does is it maps how various algorithms, when they think, they will become a reality. And because those algorithms are highly dependent on having more powerful quantum computers available. And the quantum computers are still at a very, very early stage. You should not expect anything overnight. It'll take really decades for them to fully develop. But it's important to understand that you will need to have patience to bring some of this stuff to reality. But at the same time, if you are an enterprise and you're starting to look at using quantum computing for some complicated problems, now is a good time to at least get started, to have a pilot group of people getting in there to understand, what types of problems your enterprise has that can be solved with the quantum computing. Because it takes a while, it takes a long time to understand the technology, to be able to map your problem and figure out how it can be solved on quantum computing. And now is a good time to start. So the two key points that it's still, you have to be patient. It's going to take years for some of these algorithms to really come to fruition. But at the same time, smart enterprises are starting now to do that, because it will take a while before you get fully up to speed, and you should not expect things overnight. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chris, and we can start the question and answer session.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Dick. And that's that last slide is a great setup for what I was going to propose as our sort of first question. So you kind of shared this. That's what Boston Consulting Group thinks the time frame or the timeline might be. I wanted to ask each of the panelists to share with us, give us, 90 seconds on your take on, near-term versus long-term viability versus hype. Like what you think will happen when. Shahar, I want to start with you. You're actually, again, both of you are actually doing it, but in terms of time frame and sort of relevance is the right qualifier, but I mean, broad spread applicability, if you will.
So one interesting thing about the Boston Consulting Group is that their time frame is becoming shorter and shorter. So if you look at their reports from 2 years ago, they predicted everything to be 20 years ahead. And now they're saying it's 2 years. So the future is, the future is coming. It's coming faster than we expected it.
Yeah.
I think there are things today that you can do in quantum that are useful. In some areas, it is a game changer. Optimization problems you can solve today, and it is a game changer on some optimization problems. You just need to find the right questions to ask. If you know what questions you're asking and you know how to translate those, because you shouldn't do quantum for the sake of quantum. You should do quantum because it's better, it's useful, it's faster. So if you can translate chemistry into an optimization problem, you can solve it, or you can solve some of those questions today. So again, and I think you should be ready, because again, the future is coming, it's faster. You need to start thinking about it today to be ready for it when it's here tomorrow.
Right. Again, in this context, I always like to cite William Gibson, right? The famous science fiction author. And I dropped this line before, but I'm going to do it again because I think it's powerful. He says, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So exactly. I mean, I think the follow on is, quantum is here, but it's, it's emerging. So Mehdi, give us your 2 cents. Give us 2 minutes on what you think. Where are we in terms of hype versus applicability?
So I completely agree with Shahar in the sense that if you look back 2 years ago, everybody was saying, oh yeah, no, come on, it's like, it will take at least 15, 20 years from now, and we're not ready, that will take time, and so on. But you should get started now because, as Doug said it, now it's a good time to start just because of resources available. Because in order to be able to program these quantum computers, these early stage quantum computers, even if everybody's trying to make things like more accessible to the classical developer community, it is still extremely difficult to come up with a new algorithm in order to solve a new problem. And even if you want to solve a problem with something that's very close to an already used algorithm, it is still difficult. Like I'm thinking about quantum SVM, for example. You want to add more variables. Oh, that's not easy. That's just not easy. And that's research work. And the thing is, there's a very small set of people. Okay, let's put it this way. There's a small set of people who understand AI, and even smaller set of people who understand quantum, a super small set of people who understand both and can play on both sides of the line and solve a relevant problem that the industry is facing today. So that's one thing. On the timeline itself, my personal bet is a few years from now, not more than 5 years, because what I've seen so far is a massive acceleration. And if you look at the published IBM roadmap, for example, for their quantum computers, like you will see that they do expect to come up with 1,000 qubit devices in 2023. At the same time, you have other technologies and other hardware providers who base their devices on, let's say, trapped ion, for example, like Honeywell, who are already claiming and they demonstrated high quantum volumes, which is a way to measure the performance of the machine today with more and more qubits. And you have IonQ, for example, claiming also all kind of numbers. So I'm still waiting for the articles to be published. And on top of that, you have lots of emerging startups on the hardware side who are building brand new devices. And it's accelerating over the time extremely rapidly. So I would say only a few years.
Yeah. So I want to tease out something that you mentioned. We talked about this a little bit in our preparation, but you had said there are people who know about AI, people know about quantum. So people watching this webinar, I'm assuming are sort of grounded maybe more in AI, wanting to learn more about quantum. So Doug, I'm going to put you on the spot about how do we connect the AI and quantum communities better? Are there techniques, are there processes? How do we connect those dots?
Yeah, that's actually a common problem, and it's not necessarily limited to AI. But basically, if you look out there, there are people, like Mehdi, for example, who are experts in quantum, and understand the algorithms and the hardware and that type of thing. And then there's people at these various companies, enterprises, who understand the problems that the companies have, and what are the problems, and they've been, maybe sometimes they're called data analysts, and they've been working to solve those classically, but they not experts in quantum. How do you get the two together? And one of the things I've seen as I study the industry is there are companies like Cambridge Quantum Computing is one of them, but there's several others that serve as the in-betweens, people who are in between the quantum providers like IBM and the enterprises, the data analysts at the enterprises, and they work with them to help them map their problems on a quantum computer. So I think that's very thriving industry. Shahar company is also in that same vein, but there are many others who do that. Some of them specialize in specific areas, like drug discovery, like Shahar. Some specialize in optimization. Some specialize in finance. Some are a little bit more general. Cambridge Quantum Computing, for example, is general. They work in multiple domains, but it's a very important segment of the industry that I think will help people get take advantage of quantum much faster.
Yeah. So Shahar, I want to ask you, we talked about sort of meta level challenges to connecting quantum and AI. So you're doing it every day kind of at Polaris. What do you see as the challenges? So a list I had made are things like business ROI, educational issues, are there resource issues, operational challenges, we've done it this way, it's worked, we don't want to change it, or why should we fund this? Where's the attributable revenue? We got to keep the street happy. So what's your take on sort of how to do that?
So I think one of the main questions here is, as you said, ROI. Can we show that there's a return on the investment? And this is always a problem with new technology. Finding the first couple of cases where you show that this is useful. At least in pharma, it's just in big pharma and in some of the biotech as well, it's just now that people are beginning to understand the power of AI by itself. Now you add quantum to the mix, it might be even more complicated. So I think the moment that you come to companies and you say, it's useful, it's working, here are some examples, this is a good way to move the discussion forward.
Yeah.
That's at least how we build it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, Mehdi, I want to sort of continue on that and talk about, so we're talking about what verticals and industries are best positioned to combine quantum and AI. And that one slide you had showed, you cut a pretty broad swath in terms of verticals and industries, right? And the implication is disciplines as well. So can you share more specifically without revealing any, proprietary information about clients or competitive advantage? Like, what are people actually doing in this space?
So people are doing a lot of things. So what I can definitively share with you is, and you can find it on the web, is we did announce with Total Oil and Gas a multi-year collaboration to develop quantum algorithms for carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So that was I mean, I personally love the project.
Yeah, wow,
and that's really all around quantum chemistry. So originally, and actually that was stated by Richard Feynman, everybody thought that quantum chemistry problems will be the first to exhibit quantum advantage. Now it's not 100% sure, because I mean, optimization is doing quite a big comeback. I would lie if I'd say I know exactly what's going to come first, but that's going to be an interesting last 10 seconds race to watch definitively.
Right. Yeah. So a question I like to pose to experts like you folks are insight into what I call unlikely applications of AI and quantum, right? And again, in preparing for this panel, Doug, you had shared a really interesting example about Lockheed and University of California. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So one of the problems that anyone who's writing a software program, very, very large classical software program, and I'll give you an example. In Lockheed's case, it might be the software firmware that's used inside of a fighter jet, or in an autonomous vehicle, all the software that goes in there, or even a cell phone these days. There are millions and millions of paths, millions of different scenarios that the software needs to handle. And the question is, how can you test that software to understand that it's handling it correctly and not having any errors? So, Lockheed's very worried about that because it is so complicated, and they're, the software they put in their jets has millions of lines of code. They actually worked on some research with the University of Southern California to use a D-Wave quantum annealer to sort of walk through all the paths and try to understand where the software errors might be. So that's an example of an area where you would not think about it initially that a quantum computer can be used, but if you think about it on a more general term, that's in technology, it's very common that someone will come up with a concept and it'll ultimately be used for things that people had no idea. If John von Neumann invented his the first computers in the 1940s, he would not have thought people would be using it for Facebook.
Really, yeah, for sure. Well, back to your sort of metaphor that quantum will evolve similar to, I mean, I think of it as similar to DARPANET, ARPANET, the internet, and then even like social media or mobile applications. I mean, it's the internet. It's patterns that we've seen that I think will be replicated as quantum evolves. Right?
May I add some perspectives
Yes,
on
please.
this? See, what's happening is in terms of investment, the capital intensity is good, right? A lot of companies are raising few $100 million at a time, and lots of more money is being put into the companies that we all know. However, if the results don't come and the customers are not able to use all of that, where quantum computing applications should be multiple dimensional problems that should be there, which cannot be solved by, even though it's today I'm using the word legacy for comparing only computing, where you cannot have too many parameters there, number one. And the accuracy is not the deal in the quantum computing, because the number of parameters, number of dimensions increase. For example, virology, epidemiology, and the NOVA and that kind of a thing, right? And yeah. I'm just giving an example of this where it's not easily predictable, but the quantum paradigm can solve all of that problem, but it's not the accuracy that is there. It should be able to give you a overall general direction of what's going to happen first to start with, rather than regular computing paradigm with only few parameters it cannot solve, number one. Number two, that a lot of money has been put in. Now the investor expectations will be a lot more when every one of us are saying, oh, it'll only take 1 year now and 2 years now. Something has happened that doesn't mean revenue, because if you solve only one problem. Secondly, the customers should be able to pay proportionate to the amount of money that has been raised. A lot of money has been raised by companies I don't want to even name, and are they able to turn it over in terms of customer applications, solving problems, and they are ready to pay that much cost, because companies have 100, 200, 300 experts themselves. Many of them are PhDs, nothing less. So we have to understand how this can be done. Another multi-dimensional problem is the stock market, financial industry itself also. That is a test, and someone has to do a serious analysis on that and see what is it.
I certainly heard talk about people describing the quantum winter is coming, right? That,
yeah, and then also M&A. It's not M&A ready in a given time.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on. In prepping, we talked about, quantum computing gets most of the press, right? Most of the limelight is on companies and organizations dealing with quantum computing per se. But there are also two meta-level applications, quantum networks and quantum sensors, that also have the potential to have incredible impact on business and culture. So, Mehdi, you cited an example in our prep that I'd like you to share with our listeners.
Yes, so actually I'm a big fan of quantum sensors. That's probably my background in physics. And one of the examples that you can find in lots of articles is quantum gravitometers that will have applications like really all over. Like, for example, today, people are losing lots of money doing construction and hitting rocks. A quantum gravitometer will be sensible enough to detect.
There's a practical application right there.
Exactly. So now moving from Earth to space, when I was at IBM, so yeah. I was working with, as part of the startup program with lots of startups, and some of them were playing on the sensor side and on the quantum computing side as well. At some point last year, NASA decided to go with NASA Challenge, and they did a call for proposal. And what we did is we did put two startups together. So one doing artificial intelligence in the US, and all of them startups. The second one doing quantum sensor and quantum computing, actually from Switzerland, called Mirax. The AI startup is called Apero Global.
I'm going to put this link in the chat, just not to interrupt you, but
yes.
Yeah.
And what happened is it's not a startup that did submit to this challenge. It's Combo, like Apereo Global, did submit, supported by Mirex in Switzerland, and also supported by IBM, because we did provide the computational capacity for quantum computers. And I found it like a beautiful example all about collaboration across countries and across basically verticals and different areas of science.
Yeah, so that's an exciting application for sure. So let me say, we have a few minutes. I have one more question.
We have 10 more minutes. We have 10 more minutes.
Okay, yeah.
As a perfect timing wise, if you ran over, it should be okay because it's the last event in our conference.
Yeah, okay. So what I've asked the panelists to do is think about thought leaders, influencers, evangelists, people that are doing amazing work in this space, in the AI and quantum space, if you will, and ask them to share. So we'll put some links in the chat, but who wants to start? Shahar, you want to start?
Sure, love to. So Kitty Young, she's a physicist, a quantum physicist, but also she's an artist. And she does multiple things. She's really a Renaissance woman. But one of my favorite things that she does is she's teaching quantum computing through comics. Now you may think that this is, not serious.
Through comics, really? I put a link in the chat, by the way. Yeah.
Yes, but it is hardcore quantum. Okay, she's talking about Hamiltonians, coherence, decoherence, the whole thing, but it is explained through comics. I highly recommend following her on Twitter and on her art, but also taking her class.
Wow.
And
so is she like a professor, or what does she do? What's her day job? I mean, does she make a living in quantum cartoons?
She works at Microsoft.
She works at Microsoft.
She works at Microsoft. Yes, wow. She works at Microsoft as part of their quantum computing team. The whole thing started by when she, as part of her job on quantum computing, she gave a class inside Microsoft on quantum computing. And
wow. And does she have a blog as well, or how does she make these comics available? How do you see them?
So I think also on that same, if you will look at the same document, the line behind that, it's a Hackaday. So this is a site where you can join classes.
I'm going to put that in.
This is a class, and the classes are every Sunday afternoon, but you can go back and start from class number 1 and follow that.
So it's a course that she has put together? Wow.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that.
So and of course, Twitter and all of these things.
Yeah. So follow her on social media. Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. So again, to our listeners, I put the 2 links. I put her name and LinkedIn profile link, and then the Hackaday, the course, Quantum Computing Through Comics. Wow. Very interesting. Great. Yeah. Thank you, Shahar. All right. Who wants to go next?
I can go and mention some items there.
Yeah.
Valuation game. This valuation game is going to be very important between the companies who are already funded, with deep pocket situations. And valuation is going to be the key going forward in the multiple aspects of it. One of them, if the valuation is not good, somehow someone proves with whatever formula, because we don't have a reference for valuation in this industry at all. And so more money has to come. Valuation will mean something.
But I think valuation, not to interrupt you, Dr. Murthy, valuation is determined by business outcome, right? So
yeah,
and more that's demonstrable. I mean, as these, both Shahar and Mehdi's companies are, have real clients and are, assuming, generating attributable revenue. So I think that's.
But
the thing is the vector that determines valuation, right? Of growth or vector rather than an instant. And you all know all of that already. So that vector has to be demonstrated for more money to come in.
We just have a few minutes. I'm going to interrupt you because we prepared some insight we want to share. So Doug or Mehdi, you want to talk about who mentioned Maria? The amazing
that was
Mehdi,
me.
yeah.
So yes, I'm definitely a big fan of Maria Schultz. So she's a scientist. She works for a company, a quantum company called Xanadu. Actually, they are next door in Toronto. They, by the way, have a beautiful office, like on the top of a building with a magnificent view of the lake. It's beautiful.
She's in like South Africa, right? Isn't that where she?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So she wrote a book called Supervised Learning with Quantum Computers. You can find her on YouTube as well. And I found one of her video on how to encode classical data into quantum states. Absolutely awesome, because I ran into exactly the same problem when I worked on quantum image processing. And actually that's key, because whatever speed up you want to gain through quantum algorithms, you don't want to lose it through this encoding process. So she publishes lots of articles. She talks at a very decent amount of conferences. And these days, lots of her talks are available on YouTube. So that's a very good thing.
Well, that's terrific. So, and I think it's fantastic that both of you have mentioned women. So in the spirit of increasing gender parity, and I say this to all our listeners and participants, we need more women encouraged to get into technology more broadly, but certainly quantum specifically. So that's my little advertisement. So I'm delighted, Shahar and Mehdi, that you both mentioned women. So Doug, let's
Yeah.
go to
Okay.
you.
Just on that note, there is an organization called Women in Quantum.
Yes.
That's organized by the One Quantum that holds seminars. It's quite good, and I've certainly promoted them. So my person who I think has done a lot for AI and quantum is actually someone associated with Mehdi's company. It's Professor Bob Cooka, who is at Oxford University, and he's the senior academic advisor to Cambridge Quantum Computing. And he's come up with two things which I think are quite significant. And Mehdi sort of mentioned them very, very briefly. The first is quantum natural language processing. Again, that's one of those things I would not have said would be an immediate target for quantum, but he's done a lot of research in that area, has had some really interesting results. And I did meet him at a conference earlier this year, and he was talking about that. I was just really intrigued. The other thing he did, it was actually several years ago, he came up with a new type of notation for quantum. It's called, I guess in Britain, they call it ZX calculus. Of course, in the US, we would say ZX calculus.
Right.
But it's a way of notating states and notating gates. And it's a very visual way of doing it. And again, it's quite unique. But I've been told by people at Cambridge Quantum Computing that that's actually using that as one of their secrets for achieving some very, very good optimization algorithms using that methodology. So Professor Bob Cooka from Oxford University would be my nominee.
Great. Well, thank you, Doug. And I put his link and his title in the chat.
Okay.
I also just put in an article that you had shared. So I'm going to put the rest of these.
Okay.
I think we're coming to the end of our conversation, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you all very much. I think this was a very interesting chat. I hope the listeners and viewers found it valuable. I would encourage you to follow these companies where our experts are leading innovative projects. Certainly reach for me on LinkedIn. I don't know if the other people are comfortable with that, but let's, again, expand the community and as a result, the impact of quantum to influence business and culture in a positive way. So with that, Dr. Murthy, I'll turn it over to you. You're muted, though. You need to unmute yourself, Dr. Murthy. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
You're muted.